Hi, I'm Ben Bradshaw, and in this podcast, we're going to leverage 20 years of agency experience and tell you everything that agencies don't want you to know. If you're a small to medium business, an entrepreneur, or even an in-house marketer, we're going to give you all of the secrets, the tips, and the tricks to really skyrocket your business and beyond. So if you want to get the best out of your digital marketing, let's get into it.
All right, Ben, you've been an entrepreneur for 18 years. Would love to touch firstly on your childhood. So, what inspired you to create one of the largest digital marketing groups in Australia?
Geez, that's a big question. First of all, I was just super passionate about helping small businesses. You know, obviously I used to be a small business myself. So a magician, going, traveling the country, needing more sales and leads. So for me, I saw the impact it was having on my business, firstly, and then optimizing my own accounts. So, yeah, you just get super passionate when you see a result. And when you apply that to another business and you see the results they get, that to me is the ultimate, you know. So I'm literally helping a mate of mine across the road at the moment and monitoring his account and just seeing that first leak that came in last night. I'm calling him. So that to me is the exciting part that juices me up.
Yeah, fantastic. A lot of people think about starting a business, right, and have a lot of ideas, but it's about taking action, right? So I'd love to just touch on quickly, what was your aha moment where you thought you're going to go all in and create a large business?
Yeah, listen, I remember that vividly. So we obviously started in our garage basically, right, and we got to the point where we realised that the business was growing and we needed more sort of infrastructure. But I remember sort of having a chat with Shanna, my better half, and sort of saying that, you know, I'm going to need to prioritise basically the business in front of everything else for a period of time. And, everyone talks about mindset and it really is the case. You know, it's like it's attitude that wins at the end of the day. And I think that for me, I had a young family, I had a point to prove. So, yeah, all of those things obviously are a factor, but there's something in my personality, I think, that sort of if I'm not winning or I'm not first. So back when I was a magician, I wanted to be the number one magician in the country. I'm sort of like, you know, doing things that sort of got me to that. With our business, I wanted to be in the top three. Sat down with a business coach, and so for me, if we're not winning in a big way, I think that to me is, that really innately bothers me. So, that's ultimately,
And what drove that in you though? Like, so if you think back to your childhood, right? Like you've ultimately said you like to win, you're competitive, you saw an opportunity, right? But I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to be thinking the same way and too afraid to take action. So from your childhood, what sort of caused that in you?
Yeah, listen, I was around, in hindsight, a lot of entrepreneurship, and I didn't realise at the time. So, my dad was a general manager, so he's doing end-of-day calls in the car, and so I picked up a lot of that managerial experience from him. My mum was setting up advertising agencies in her garage, and, so I was always sort of in and around that startup culture with my mum. And, looking back, there's all of these things that sort of, came together really, like when I was entertaining and doing magic and jumping in front of people and learning to read an audience and adapt. Those were all my sales skills. And then I took that into this. I learnt sales early on. Without all those skills, I think, I wouldn't have been as easy as it was. But to me, it's like if you're not, the worst that could ever happen is I go and get a job, right? Or go back to being a magician or whatever. So for me, why not give it a go? And that was the mindset I had. And I think, if you work really hard at something, and I read a book actually called The Power of Focus, and had this idea that if you make your profession your obsession and never work a day in your life, you've probably heard it. So for me, it was just really aligning that passion of, it wasn't really about what I was doing as such, but it was about the way I was doing it, that I had this thing I was just working on non-stop, and with the belief that if you keep pumping that well, your arm might get sore, but eventually the water comes. And and that's been my experience through the businesses we've had.
So Ben, for the listeners, obviously Disrupt Group, well over sort of 3,000 clients across 2 countries. how'd you start it? What are some of the simple things you did well to build a business? And I know full well you went for a massive growth period. So, yeah, as an owner founder, like what was behind the success?
Yeah, listen, I think there's a bunch of things that you've got to get right, and it really does come down to people, right? And the way you. So first of all, you can't build a technology business even without people. It is all people ultimately, and so we've been lucky to over the years to have found the right people. They've invested in us, we've invested in them, and it really comes down to, I think, just being genuine, right? And if you genuinely care about your clients, they're all saying like they don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. So I think very early on, I think it really is that belief that you have in where you're heading and what you're doing that people, follow, I think, right? So for me, foundationally, I think it's being the right people, but at times it's then giving them space. And I think that is the rhythm that business owners need to find. Like sometimes we can actually suffocate the business, and sometimes you need to let the leaders shine and do their own thing. And a lot of that comes from intuition, I think. And so in my experience, the right people, making sure they've got all the tools they need, the technology, so on and so forth, the direction, but then just leaving them to it. And early on, I remember even with our second office, I would literally just deliberately take the day off because, or half the week off, just to kind of let the business kind of work on its own, and people sort of had to figure it out, and you go back and the business was stronger for it. So, so.
Fantastic. And do you remember the time when you and Shanna would have sat down and just thought you were onto a winner here? Like potentially your sales were increasing or profit margins were improving or you had great customer retention. But can you remember that period and kind of how that discussion with Shanna?
Yeah, I can. I actually remember I was driving into a shopping centre car park. I was on the phone with my dad actually. And I go, I think I've figured it out. I think we've got this. And yeah, there's been a couple of those moments early on, but it was ultimately when we realised that there's a big need and problem, and we were solving that at the time better than anyone else. And that's ultimately all business, right? If you've got a better way or a consistent way of serving and helping others, your business will fly. And so for me, yeah, that is it. And we did a few times realise, because we were doing things quite early on, like we were automating, we created our own automated invoicing, we created our own automated sales system, so on and so forth. And those early moves that we made sort of accelerated our growth. And if I look back, we would have done those things a lot earlier, but there was those moments when we went, wow, this is working. We've got, and we went through periods where we actually hired, say, more developers, and we had all of the sort of resources out of whack, I guess you call it. And when we kind of evolved, it took years, right? 3 years, 4 years before our business was really functional. But at that point, you start realizing, okay, we've got something here. It's smooth, we're growing, and everyone's in control.
Fantastic. Not many founders have grown such a large business by bootstrapping it, basically. Keen just to unpack for a minute or two just how you were so diligent with reinvesting into the business. I'm assuming there were probably many years where you probably barely took a wage and just pumped everything into growing without debt.
Yeah, so it's a really good question because, yeah, we essentially had one business being I was a magician, corporate entertainer, and we didn't have much savings. I had 30 grand or something like that at the time. And we found this office that we knew we needed to move into because the baby was screaming and the dog was barking. So we moved into this office, but it was absolutely run down. We had to renovate the whole thing. So we took about half the savings and just renovated our office space. And at the time, we had about $1,800 a month in revenue, right? So it was, not a lot. But we knew that there was something there. We knew we sort of wanted to back it. And, so for us, it was certainly around we had some level of savings, but it got to a place a few times that when you're signing a lease or you're employing people and you're looking at it and you get to your first year. So I actually don't have a credit card and I still don't have a loan. I've never had a loan. And so we've been pretty disciplined around those sort of things and making sure that we had enough savings and then we reinvest. And A great friend of mine, Phil DeBella, talks about, you learn, then you earn, then you save, and then you invest in those order. And I think, so I used to go into businesses, franchises actually, that would go broke. And Shanna and I would go in there, and not a lot of people know that, but we would learn the discipline of where they went wrong, and it was cash. They'd just go and buy the new boat. They forgot about the tax bill and, all these sort of things. And so we were very scared. So I was living in a rental. The business would be producing millions of dollars a year, and I was scared to actually buy a house or to all of that sort of thing. And so, it's funny because in one part of my life I'm very driven in a way, sort of extrovert, like let's go. And in another part, we're quite conservative, And so, and I think that served us well over the years.
Obviously work in the small to medium-sized space. There's a lot of founders and owners that be watching this, sort of deciding whether or not they need to use an agency at all. So just keen to unpack, what's the benefits of outsourcing your marketing to an agency?
Yeah, so I'll answer that two ways. Firstly, we help small to medium businesses because they're the backbone of everything, right? And they need help. And if you actually look at all the studies and the data around small to medium businesses and the failure rates in 3 years and all this sort of stuff, they need help with their marketing, right? Fundamentally, right? Now, it bothers me sometimes. You see thought leaders on the internet saying, don't use agencies or don't do that. And that to me is just absolutely crazy because your time is the most valuable asset. So you could do it yourself, but how much is your time worth? And we're in the greatest rate of change digitally and of all time, right? That's just fact. So you need to be keeping abreast of what's going on in marketing. You can't do that on your own, like with AI, whatever. You just cannot. And so the idea of outsourcing is leverage. And I think the best thing a business owner can do is go, hey, you focus on what you're good at. You get on and run, do your business stuff. We take care of the marketing. And it's only fair. So we believe in a results-based, performance-based, system for that. So if we don't get better results or we're not saving them time, we shouldn't have that client, right? So ultimately, I think the idea of agency is really about the idea of outsourcing. It's the idea of leverage, and it's the idea of time. And it's also about you don't know what you don't know until and unfortunately, there is a lot of people out there trying to spruik the latest idea on AI, the latest idea on this. And unfortunately, it's a lot of businesses will fail or waste a lot of time by taking these types of ideas through a course or through a thing, but without the time to implement it. And listen, years ago, I used to do seminars, and I go, hands up who believes in Google Analytics and tracking and measuring your marketing, and the whole room would go up, right? And then next minute, who's actually measuring the results? And half the room would go down, and the rest of the room would be up. And then it would be like, well, who's actually doing anything about it? The whole room would go down, and that's basically the issue. Is it's one thing to know something; it's another thing to have the time and the ability to actually go and implement it. And essentially, that's what agency brings.
As a founder, I know that how much emphasis you put on sales and marketing as a business. You've always had large sales teams and so on, and been very focused in that area. Like for our founders that are listening to this, what's the importance of having that focus on sales and marketing?
Yeah, well, for me, it starts with sales and marketing, and I learned this early from my dad. Right, is if you don't have the sales coming in, that's the engine. So you could have the best product, the best. Microsoft may not have been at the time Windows the best operating system, but it had the best sales and marketing, right? And I think ultimately, particularly in a changing world, it's so important to stay abreast of marketing and sales techniques as they're changing, right? People's trust, the way we consume the internet, the way we consume media. So, again, one of the reasons why I think working with agencies is essential, but it is a full-time job sometimes keeping up with the latest marketing, latest sales. But if you don't do that, ultimately your business is falling behind. And I'm passionate, secondly, around small to medium business. So I believe that our economy is driven by small to medium business, which it is, I think. And their ability to adopt the latest marketing, the latest sales, even the government's job to actually get their head around it and apply that to support the small to medium businesses is actually ruining our economy. So first of all, it's essential that we all help each other, right? As the world's changing, staying abreast of the latest sales and marketing techniques is essential for a business. It's not like it's something as an additive, it's where it starts. If you don't get the customers in the door, you've got no customers to manage in the first place.
Yeah, well said. And what about for founders about working in your business versus working on your business? I know it's something that you're great at doing at the moment, is you're not so much dotting the I's, crossing the T's, you're giving the team space, but you're very much just as invested in working on the business, but you're doing it from a few meters back, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, listen, there's a time and place where you need to pull back and you need to sort of be in a different phase in the business. And, I've done it all in various forms over the years, slept under the desks and being really hands-on. But there's a time and place where that you lose the forest for the trees sort of thing, right? And so for me at the moment, because we're doing a lot of innovation, we're doing a lot of change, we're investing in the next 10 years for our business, which is awesome to say as a business that's 19 years old. I realise how important it is to get that right. And so I'm going to be a lot more hands-on in and around that stuff, onboarding new leaders, getting that right. But there'll be a time and place where it'd be detrimental for me to be too involved in the business. And so it gets back to that dance, that rhythm, right? Is understanding that. But it's also a good saying, you can't manage what you don't know. And I really do believe in that. The more sort of wisdom I've had over the years around managing and all leadership and stuff. And it's hard to know how long things should take or, whether the quality is good or bad or what tools should be used or shouldn't be used and all these sort of things if you haven't kind of seen or experienced it yourself. And, to stay relevant in my world, it's important that I, literally last night I'm in a Google account for my mate setting up conversion code using, a tag manager and stuff. And I could have leveraged that to somebody in our team, but I'm doing it so I can stay current as well.
So we're a little bit different to most agencies, right? We work on a no contract basis, month to month or week to week, depending on your billing cycle. A lot of our competitors don't do that. They prefer clients to sign large contracts. How have you built such a big business on a no contract model?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really comes down to results, right? If we back ourselves and we're aligned to the business's interests, then, we don't get it right all the time, but more often than not we do. That's ultimately, I think, it's the right thing. And I remember years ago, there's another agency, which I won't name, but a big one in Australia, and they were basically cloaking, right? So they'll say, hey, it's on a monthly thing, and they'll take the money that they give to Google and put on a report as one total spend, including their fees. And, for all the client knew, $100 went to Google instead of $1,000 or whatever, right? And it was essentially not transparent. So for me, we've always believed that, hey, it's your ad spend, it's your Google account. We're just here to make it better. Google's the tax man, we're the accountants. And to me, that's the most ethical, the most transparent way of doing it. And then, first of all, then if we can't add value, even if we get the same results and save you time, right, that's value. Even if, we get you the one extra lead per month or whatever. So for me, it's just making sure that the model itself, in whatever it is aligned to everyone's interests. And you'll see people come into different industries and different, we've got a business doing marketing and music, say, and there's a great example where you get these, say, big labels that are trying to, do the wrong thing by the artists ultimately, and they'll get a quick win and they'll ruin a career. But to me, that's not sustainable. And we're living in a world now where we've got so much more access to tools, to and those sort of things. So I actually think it's a really great time in business because, but at the same time, there's a lot more noise out there. There's a lot more confusion. There's a lot more tools and there's a lot more, agency models and things. And I think it just gets down to this: is ultimately, if you can align your business to the client's interests at all times, then you've got a winner.
Now, I'm sure a lot of business owners are sort of running through their head, how do I pick the perfect agency? So, what's some questions, if you're a new business, would you ask yourself to find the right agency?
Yeah, well, first of all, you make sure they've got all certifications and the standard stuff. But secondly, how long have they been around for? I think the challenge that I'm seeing, particularly these last couple of years, there's a trend for a lot of people to start up agencies and and even outsource everything. So I've seen things from people in our local community that are there going, hey, I'm going to set up an agency, and they're going to outsource it all to overseas. And to me, it's done from a disingenuous point of view, right? It's just about them trying to make money. And again, I think so. It's really about, do they have a track record of results? Do they? Is it all measurable? Is it transparent? Do I own all my work ultimately? Like, is this my account? Is this my assets? Transparency, right? Making sure that they're just good humans, right? I think there's a lot of people out there. So for us, we want to be Australians dealing with Australians. We want to always have that relationship with our clients. And that's really, really important to us. And I think businesses now, particularly with the rate of noise out there, that's really important to them as well.
I'm still surprised that there's so many customers we speak with that are using an agency, but they don't own the IP. They're getting PDF reports sent. They can't check the work, the change history, etc. Like, why is that not a great way to work with an agency?
Yeah, listen, it's dodgy, right? Ultimately, and it is the Wild West out there, unfortunately. And I think there's a lot of people out there that try to keep their clients by obscurity, right, and keeping them in the dark and not telling them what's going on, and pretend like marketing is this voodoo science that only they know. And I think that's ultimately, it's deceitful and it's the wrong way. So I think doing the opposite of that, leaning in and saying, hey, this is how it's working, this is where we're at, and being completely transparent ultimately empowers the client so they can appreciate the service more. And, you can't appreciate what you can't see. And, so I think there's lots of bad practice out there where people will, create an asset that they don't fully own, or create a Google account that's theirs, and then the client cancels, they keep it, this sort of stuff. And to me, that's fundamentally, almost borderline criminal. So, and it happens in different industries, right? In music, there's examples where, bad relationship with a manager, and they'll go and delete their songs off Spotify for their artists. And we've seen all sorts of stuff in that realm as well. And it's pretty sad out there. And I think we just got to get back to people's livelihoods, right? So as marketers or as agency, if we can have, a small impact, we make a big difference to their livelihoods, right? For a business that wasn't getting leads, they can now take their family on holidays. They can, have more time. And we've got to remember how stressful it is to start a business, to not know how to do marketing fully, to, all of these challenges. And that comes with big responsibility too, right? So as a digital marketer, we have the ability to really make or break businesses, and it's back to care factor, right? Like, if we generally care, that's going to, really what gets the results, because there's always ways to get results, right? In every industry, in every campaign. So it's our tenacity to work with businesses. It really gets us there.
Now, obviously, when a client's onboarded, they'll get passed over to an account manager. Like, in your view, could you describe the perfect account manager and what you're expecting from your team?
Yeah, so it's a great question. For me, it's somebody that does whatever it takes to get results for their clients. It's pretty much it, and builds great rapport with a client, because, again, you can't manage. The old saying is like, a man convinced against his will is a man unconvinced still. So sometimes you've got to have a coaching ability with the client, and not to talk at them, but, do you think if we raise the budget for a day, we would then double our leads, this sort of thing. So I think it's really important to be invested in their business, firstly, and be invested in the results. And without that, then we essentially just support people. We're just, and that's, to me, if you've got those two things right, you can go anywhere.